So again, thank you guys. If you're following us and you're tuning in, thank you for following us through the tech glitches and all that. This is the second interview of the Another Scholars Score interview series. And I'm going to go share this out to my Facebook page. Tiff, if you can share it out to the group, that would be awesome. And then Kaya and Latarsha, if you guys can introduce yourselves and tell the audience a little bit about yourselves.
Okay, Kaya, would you like for me to go first?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Latarsha Lytle, and my daughter is a senior. Yay, 2020. And as her mom, I'm an advocate for finding your purpose and moving towards your journey. And I needed her to own her voice and her story and her journey post high school. So I've been prepping her at home with a lot of tools to help her gain confidence and express herself creatively. She's also entrepreneurial and an inventive person, and I knew her strengths early on. And so I needed her to find a path that would fit her and allow her to continue her journey debt-free. Our goal is not to take on a lot of college debt and student loans, and to find ways to use our talents and gifts to fund her way forward into her college life.
Okay.
Awesome. Kaya?
I'm Kaya. I'm a senior. I am figuring out what I need to do and figuring out like what are my next steps towards what my goals in life and where I'm gonna go next. The journey has been hard, but every journey is a little bit challenging at first. But then when you start to get into it, start to, feeling it through, then it becomes normal and less challenging.
Less challenging. Awesome. So we're gonna be as open and honest as we can with you guys about this journey. And so Kaya said that the journey has been hard. There are moments where we had to let her cry it out because it was overwhelming with school going on. It was overwhelming with just life going on, and we just had to be really open and honest about like where she was and let her release. And sometimes we think that the whole release process is something's terribly, terribly wrong. But after you go through so many things and deal with the things that they're dealing with at school, at Kaya's particular school, we won't get into that a lot, but there were 3 different kids that went to that school that were in my program at one point. So I was aware there was some negativity happening there that they were all struggling with. All of them came to me at some point and talked about it. And so just being honest and giving your kids that space to release, and if they need to stop for a moment and gather themselves, like being okay with that in this process. That's going to happen sometimes, right? All right. So I put as the header, guys, from bad test taker to full ride scholar, because I know so many of you are like, I'm worried about the SAT, the ACT. My kid doesn't test well. I hear that phrase all the time. They're not a good test taker. And Kaya was a self-proclaimed, I'm not a good test taker when it comes to the SAT, ACT. This is not working. I'm not going to be able to do this. And I started working with Kaya sophomore year. At what point did you kind of start to buy into it? I know that we got full buy-in. I know when that happened, but at what point did you start to buy into, I can do this. At least I should be doing the practicing and going along with the prep program?
Probably maybe the end of my junior year, I started to realize I'm gonna become a senior soon, so I need to get serious and start prepping.
Yeah. And so I'm saying that to parents to say this. We started as sophomore year. Kaya, at one point, we explored military for about 6 to 8 months in this journey, right? Mm-hmm. So this was not like we're going to college. We know we're going to college. We know exactly what we're making in. When I get students in my space, that's not necessarily what's going on, guys. So chime in. If he has a question, we're going to answer a question. If anybody else has a question about anything, drop your question in the comments, and we'll be happy to respond and answer that. So it's not about the journey itself. Like, you enjoy the journey and embrace what's happening, but understand that doesn't dictate what happens at the end, right? Just because the journey was rough, just because it wasn't perfect, doesn't mean you don't get great results at the end. And so her story is one of those stories that I felt like also demonstrates that, because Kaya has written a book. She sold products on Amazon during this time. She's gotten her test scores up over 100 points during this time, and she's going to college debt free. The first year is fully covered, and she's going to get a lot of life experience and a stipend. So this is Kaya's story at the end. But when we were looking at this back junior year, there were points where we were like, she said she's going military. She doesn't want to deal with this test. But we gave her the warning, right, Kaya, that you probably have to deal with this test because the military is going to ask for these scores. So we need to go ahead and move forward with it. But at that point, she had some other things that she needed to do for military preparation that she wanted to put ahead of that. And we allowed her to do that and let this be her journey. All right. What would you share about going from this test is hard, I can't really do this, to I'm going to buckle down and study and make this work some kind of way? Like, what had to happen for you? What shift in your mind had to happen for you to get to that point?
I'm actually in an AVID program at my school, and I've seen all my friends, they study really hard and they like put in all the work and put on the hours, and I admired that. So I really buckled down my junior year and studied and prepared for the test so I could bring up my score.
Right. Because at one point we were meeting one-on-one and you weren't practicing in between. And then there was a moment where it clicked.
Yeah.
And I would say, did you do the practice work? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, let's go look at it.
Yeah.
What changed? So you started doing the practice work, things started moving. How did it feel to start having success? Like, you started being able to talk with me about, like, when we had sessions, okay, Kaya, you went from getting 2 out of 5 questions in this topic correct. You're getting 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Like, how did that help you?
It just pushed me to greater things. To see that I went from like getting 2 right to 5 out of 5 right, it just motivated me. It kind of helped me realize that if I got 5 out of 5 on this one, then I get 5 out of 5, on like the real test, and like 5 out of 5 out of each, section. So
yeah. So that's why I brought that up, because I want parents to know that's why going through the process is important for them, because she has to come to that. I could tell Kaya that all day, but she had to see that for herself and come to that realization. I really can move myself from a 40% to 100% on a topic. And because I did it in practice, and these questions are very similar to when I took the PSAT or the SAT before that, I know that I'm highly capable of doing a 5 out of 5 on the topic too, on an actual test. So it really boosts their confidence. And then Kaya took the test one last time, and we were working on her college apps, and we needed to meet some deadlines. So that was really the last time it made sense for her to test. But tell me about that moment. I want Latarsha to tell us about that moment where you called me or you text me, and then we talked, and you were like, guess what Kaya said about these tests?
One of the things that I noticed is one time when I picked her up from the test, she was really down, and I said, what happened? And she was a little bit down on herself. Then she goes to take it the second time. And this is probably like the 4th time for her taking it, or the 3rd or whatever. But this particular time, she said, I was on section so and so, and I think I skipped. And yes, I'm going to do better the next time.
Yeah.
So then let's fast forward to the final time she took it. She came out and she said, "Oh, I get it now. I actually love taking this test and I want to take it again."
I thought that was so funny coming from where Kaya was before. And I just knew, I was like, oh my God. So there was a moment, and when we talk about Kaya taking the test, and I want to be honest, because this happens a lot, guys. And this is why I'm so adamant about making sure we give time in between the tests. There was a moment where something happened, like the school scheduled an event, I think a field trip, like the night before the SAT, or the week of, or something. Like it was the day before, the night of, something crazy. And then SAT moved her. She didn't have a seat at a location at one of those times. So honestly, she had one good time that she actually got good sleep the night before, and she knew where she was scheduled, and was able to get there without any drama, right? Like she had one good testing experience in terms of that. And so I want to help you understand you're not going to be in control of everything that comes up around this test. Like you can do all the study in the prep, but especially we're dealing with coronavirus now, like a school may decide arbitrarily, we're not going to host a test. And then SAT has to move you. You have to test in this foreign location. Like all these things could happen. And these were things that Kaya was dealing with along this. And that I think they were going on a college tour to schools that she was actually interested in attending. And we had to make the decision, does it make sense for her to go on this field trip and actually go interact and see this college, and she wants to go there? Or do we say no because she's taking the test the next day? And I think it was an overnight trip on a Thursday, and the test was Saturday and all of that. Yeah. So these are things to be aware of and decisions you may have to make. And these are hard decisions for us to consider. All right. Is there anything else about the testing experience and going full circle from where you were to where you were at that last testing moment where you're like, I want to take this test again? Is there anything you would like to share with the parents and students that are watching the broadcast about that before we move on to some other topics?
Yeah, I wish I could take it again, honestly, because I felt really good where I was and what score I had, and it it's like it was like I had a lower score, and then like I worked really hard, and then I took the test and I got a better score than what I had, but
Mhm.
it brought me like happiness and like motivated me to want to take the test again. But unfortunately I ran out of time, so if I could take it again I would.
Yeah. So start early. Start early. And right now for class of 2021, that's kind of hard, right? Because we lost the testing dates, but you need to be studying. So I want to answer some questions, ask you guys some questions, answer the questions that are in the chat about the stuff we talked about so far before we move on. Tiffany said, what tools have you used to help her in her journey?
Okay.
That's directed at you, Natasha.
All right. So, one of the things that I really am passionate about for all of our youth and all of our young ladies is helping them own a mindset that helps them move past me. She has to own her own journey. So, one of the key things was strength finders, and taking the strength finders and having her sit down and really understand who she was in the process. Another thing was having a goal. I would ask her things. Tell me about your life beyond college. Tell me about what you were here to put on this earth to do. Tell me about your passions. Tell me about, this is how the book came along for her. Tell me about how you can pass your wisdom that you have accumulated right now to the next generation of girls coming behind you. Another key tool was community. We surrounded Kaya in our local community with a group of moms and daughters, and I started a group where we all get together once a month and we talk about real life issues, from being prepared at school, dealing with random items in life, success strategies, and keeping our mindsets right. The other thing that we worked on was disc profile and really helping her to understand that she has a certain way that she's wired, And when she understands herself better, she can now prepare for her life journey a lot better. And then she used things like mind maps and even her own writing down pros and cons of all of her choices and what she needed to get out of each season in life and this immediate season and how she's going to see herself moving from now to the next 5 or even 10 years beyond now.
Yeah. And then Kaya has a specific way. So some of your kids may process like Kaya. And I want her to share. Whenever we gave Kaya kind of like a research project to either research an idea or project that she was working on, a service project, then she was working on the book, and she needed to flesh that out. Like Latarsha was giving her tools, but she always spoke back to us in a certain way. And honestly, I think it took Latarsha and I like maybe 3 times of her doing that before it kind of clicked. This is how she's processing what we're saying. So if we talk in that language from the beginning, we move a lot faster. We're processing things with her. So Kaya, what is it? What's your tool of choice to communicate when you're having to research an idea and give the feedback to somebody else? What is it you like to create?
I like to create. I'm a very visual thinker. I like to create mind maps, but they're collages. I like to kind of like different pictures of like magazines, compelling pictures that make sense to me in my head, and maybe like write, a few sentences of what like the picture is and what it like represents, um, uh, like whatever I'm doing, so it makes sense to me in my head. But yeah, I'm a very visual thinker, and I love to not only like research it, but take it and like put it in picture form.
Yes. So Kaya always responded back to us in picture form. And it took her doing that a couple different ways before it clicked. When we asked her about her journey, when we asked her what she wants to do, even the pros and cons, she will answer us back a lot of times in pictures. When we're debriefing and saying, okay, so what did you figure out or what are you thinking? She would come to us with a PowerPoint with pictures in there, a video that she created, collages. She would always answer us in pictures. And so some of you are asking your kids questions and you want them to process verbally right back out to you. And they don't process that way. And they're getting frustrated in the process. So this is something to consider. Asking your kid, how do you want to respond to this? You need time to think about this process. Kaya is a visual thinker and she's a processor. So if you ask her something head on, like she agreed to do this interview, but normally she wants time to think about it before she answers. And then that's part of transitioning into adulthood, like having to come out of your comfort zone about some of this stuff. So she's here doing this today, talking about that. The other question we have is, how often do you study? So when you got serious about studying, how often were you studying for the test?
I would get home from school and I would study for an hour or two. Then I'll take a break and then I'll like do a little bit more, but not like to the point where it's like overwhelming, because I also had schoolwork.
Right.
Plus it was junior year. That was a big, tough year for me. So I had to learn how to balance the two things.
So you were studying about 3 times a week like that?
Yes.
Coming up, I think it was around 4 to 6 weeks before the test that she was doing that, guys.
Yeah.
All right. That's a great question. And then we have, I'm going to say that question. Because it has to do with some stuff that's coming up. All right. Let me get you back on the screen. Yay. And so let's talk about the book. You did a good segue into the book, but I wanted to start to answer the questions. So you asked her, how could she pass down her wisdom to the next generation of girls? And she ended up wanting to do it in book format. So tell us how that came about and what the book is all about.
This is for Kaya?
Yep. Yep.
The book came out Well, first, we had to think of like our what's the intended target audience. What did I want to what did I want the book to like be about, and who did I want it to be directed to.
Mhm.
So I directed it to middle school girls, because in middle school I was very kind of um, not the typical like teenager in middle school. I did different things, and people wouldn't like react to it really well. I was very awkward and quiet and reserved. And some people took it like, this girl's kind of weird. So there wasn't really much bullying, but I really found myself like without like any group, or like found myself isolated. So once I got to high school, I kind of like grew out of that, and wanted to share my advice or what I would say to my middle school self, in a book format. And with act, and then the book is like a 30-day activity book with different activities that I would give myself um, when I was in middle school. So I had different activities and different quotes, different like pictures to like motivating to the mind. And this is all like in result of me kind of talking to myself in middle school years.
Okay. So it's like you looking back in time, like what would I have wanted somebody to say to me?
Hmm.
And I'm trying to put the title up, guys. So tell me again, it's Listen Up, Middle School Girls.
Um,
Middle
Where's
school
the
girls,
title?
listen up.
yeah.
Oh, Middle School Girls Listen Up. That's my, yep. Doing it backwards. That's why I can't remember. All right. So it's Middle School Girls Listen Up. And like she said, it's a 30-day guide. And who has your book in their hands? Like what girls have gotten access to this book because you've published it? Like who has access to your book right now?
Well, my godmother in California, she let her girls see it, and she also used it in her Avid class. And then there's a girls group that is formatted towards mm, middle school girls through my church, and they have it as well.
Okay. And DeSoto Public Library has your book, right?
Yeah.
So Kaya's been a little bit modest here. So I'm going to toot her horn for her. So did you all hear what she said? Because she wrote this book and she was connected. When she had gotten connected with those students, she went on a college tour. Kaya flew by herself all the way to California. That was part of her journey. And the people that she went on that trip with eventually became students that had that book being used in their class because of the work she did. And so that is being piloted. Avid is a national program, and her book is now part of that. So in the California classrooms, okay. So this is thinking about impact and influence. I always use these words with the students when we're talking through this, like who are you trying to impact and how much influence are you trying to have over them? Like how much can you influence them to positive thoughts and positive things? Because Kaya's really big on positive imaging and positive thoughts. Like that's her thing. And when she's doing pictures, you see it come out in her pictures, you see it come out in her art. She did a portfolio piece that was beautiful for the college. So anything else you want to share about the book, Kaya? Or Latasha, either one of you guys.
Okay, so I will share. I've had moms, I've taken it, and it's amazing to watch people interact with it because there are different ways that she used to express herself and
Mm-hmm.
different items she used for self love and finding truth within yourself and finding peace and serenity. So people have taken this book out of my hand and literally began flipping the page. And each person would flip it and find that one thing that was for them. So I've had some moms who said this will work with my 6-year-old. And I've had another mom say, I'm buying this right now for my 26-year-old. So she found an amazing way using her voice to tap into a inner issue that a lot of people just can find themselves and see themselves strengthening with. And because of her format and because of her style of writing, I always had a wanting to publish my own book, and I've chosen to use the Kaya method. And now I teach other people how to take their own ideas and use Kaya's methodology to get their ideas into the world, because I thought it was an easy 30-day way to get your ideas into the world. So it's just amazing to see that she reconceptualized what a book and what a project such as this would look like and feel like. And you can feel the love, you can feel the self-love, you can feel the confidence being poured over every page. So
yeah. So Kaya, with this book, there is a point Kaya knew what she wanted to do with this book. And she had her audience, she had interviewed some girls, she had a really good idea of what she wanted to do, but she was like, how do I get the book done? Like, I have all the pieces out on the table. I've interviewed people. I know I want to do this book. How do I get this book done? And we had to come up with a framework and go, okay, do you want to do it by the alphabet, right? We went through, do you want to do it by this thing? How do you want to do this? And so students need tools to think through that process, right? And so as we went through that, she figured out, okay, I want to make sure we address these things. These are things I was thinking when I was in middle school, and I want to make sure I address these. So she came up with those 30 themes. And then because she thinks in pictures, when you see the inside of her book, it's literally a well-designed picture that shows the kids the flow of their thoughts, the way she sees it. And so it's very interesting. It's not a typical book. We have this thing called graphic novels out, but it's not a graphic novel. It's really an engaging activity book that creates, it's almost like a journaling transformation experience, but it does it through writing and pictures. So that was such a beautiful journey to watch Kaya go on. It's very interesting. Once she found her flow, she was out, I think, in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The summer before senior year, when she found her flow, she knocked the book right out. And so sometimes your kid is not being like difficult. I know, I'm the teen advocate. You guys like, she's always taking up for them, whatever. But they're trying to find their way in the world. And sometimes the tools we're giving them, it's just like when you're birthing a baby. Like one baby, you may not need any tools. You just need to coach the mom to push, and it's okay. Another one, you may need to, like, there's a whole set of things you need to use. And so just think that through when you're working with your kids, guys. That's something you want to think about, is what tools you're using. So we talked about the book. We talked about you with your mindset shift about testing. I want to talk a little bit about, okay, you have the topics, Latarsha. I'm being 100% transparent. What's the third topic that I forgot?
We were talking about communication strategies with our teens.
Yeah,
mindset and communication strategies, yeah.
Okay, so we covered everything. The test prep, the mindset. All right. So I want to talk about how and why did you decide to put Kaya in Project 104 Rides?
Okay, so here is my how and why. My child is not me. Okay, let's just clear the air. She doesn't think like me. We have some similarities. We're both creative people, but I like things fast. And what I recognized up front is that I needed her to have a place to land. More importantly, I recognized up front the cost of college. For University of Houston right now, it's $14,000 tuition for 1 year and $16,000 for room and board. And so I knew that I needed her to find a path to help generate some of these monies that she was going to need for college. I also knew when talking to her that she needed a process and a strategy to move her from each obstacle And what I found was my approach with her would not always allow her voice to really be heard because I'm not her. And so I'm approaching it from my angle. And I found that the best tool that I could give her, I told Tandy one day the best gift I could ever give my daughter was time with you. And that's
That was,
because
mm,
yeah, and that's because I recognized up front that there were some obstacles Kaya was dealing with, like her mindset about being a bad test taker. Her mindset, a lot of things were in her mind about what she could or could not accomplish. And I knew that there were all of these things and all of these hoops to jump through. And I knew I needed somebody I could trust that had my child's best interest at heart. And what I found was I would listen to Tandy and how she was talking to Kaya, the questions she asked Kaya, how she got Kaya to really think through consequences. Her approach was totally different than mine. And I don't know that I would have been able to move Kaya where she is right now without all of those countless conversations that I had with Tandy and Kaya.
well, that's beautiful to hear. Kaya, why Project 100 Full Ride? So if a student has a choice and coming in, you just knew, well, you did meet me because I came and spoke to the mother-daughter group. So you had seen me and met and knew what I was about. Why should a student sign up for this program? Why should their parents sign them up for the program? And why should they want to do Project 100 Full Rides?
College is expensive, and you need you need a way to pay for it. Scholarships is the way to go. Um, it's like you can't. I don't know. You can't really run the race without your shoes. So the scholarship is your shoes,
Okay.
and when you get finished with the race, you feel good. So finishing 100 is a lot, but it's
Mhm.
also worth it at the end.
Thank you. One of the questions I had about, so you were an Avid. I want to point this out, not to bash Avid or anything. You were an Avid, but you still found value in being part of my college readiness program, college access program. And so
Mhm.
tell parents, what was it as a student for you that was different about interacting with me and preparing for college versus interacting with your Avid teacher in your Avid classroom?
Okay. So Avid's really supporting. It allows you to make friendships, close friendships. Entering the program for like 4 years of your high school, and some in middle school. But unfortunately, they teach you about like college and like why is it like good to go to college, but they don't like really touch on like the amount of money. So like you can apply to your dream college, but looking at that bill that you will owe at the end of it, you realize that we didn't really talk about like the cost and how to like pay for it. But with Miss Tandy's program, she talks about the importance of going to college, but also the importance of like earning money so you can actually pay for the college and like won't get like into student loan and student debt at the end of it.
Okay. And there was also, did you know when you came into Project 100 Full Ride, did you know what you wanted to do for college? Like for your
I
college major or for a career?
I had an idea, but I really didn't like set like my major or profession or what I really wanted to do really like changed a lot throughout the year. But yeah.
Okay. And so that was one of the questions we had. Did you did you decide on a school and a major? So yes. What is your major going to be, Kaya?
My main major is going to be I think it's going to be architecture.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So she's into designing things. That is her core skill. That is Kaya's core skill that she always needs to be designing something. That's something we discovered in this journey. So she was looking at interior design when we started. She was thinking about architecture, um, and went through some other stuff. But she didn't own that she was an artist. I don't think. Right?
Mhm.
Were you owning that you were an artist when you started the process?
No.
No. She didn't
Mm-mm.
own that she was an artist. When I met her, that word never came out of her mouth. It never came out of her mouth until junior year that she really started owning that she was a creative being and that she was an artist. So the process helps bring those things out of students, and that's part of what we go through. And so there's another question. Let's do this question. What would you change, if anything, about your Project 100 journey? I
Probably
think both
apply.
of you guys can answer that. But
Oh,
Kaya.
okay. So, I would say apply really early and don't like wait too much on the deadlines because the deadlines will come up very rapidly, and you will miss them. So, and it will be like a loss.
Even if Miss Sandy sends you the deadline and sends like
Yeah.
Kaya and long text messages,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So that's something to say. So they're in the college application and college scholarship process. You really only need two things. You need a compelling application that makes people want to invest in you or connect with you, and then you need to apply by the deadline. Like you actually have to submit the paperwork and get it in by the person's deadline. And so you can have a very compelling application. If you never meet a deadline, you don't get any money, bottom line. And so that was one of the things. Sometimes it takes over time for students to get through. So Kaya did her first application sophomore year. She did sophomore of the year for the Lions Club. She wrote 4 essays. That was a process, and she got a taste of trying to, like, we got to meet the deadlines. But then she shifted to focus on military, and she had to come back at the towards, I think we were April of junior year when we decided we're going back on the college track. And so she had to dive in and speed back up again because she lost some ground there. And it was okay though because it was something. Okay, I got to switch back on this track, right? Latarsha, what would you say? What would you change, if anything, about your Project 100 journey as a parent?
As a parent, I wouldn't change anything. I'm glad that I engaged when I did. I'm glad that I had an advocate and my daughter had a second voice that wasn't my voice because, we are parents and we need them to do things like we want them to do things. And so having another voice, another adult voice in this journey with me helped me to not have to worry so much about making sure I taught all the lessons that needed to be taught. The partnership that I had with Tandy as a mother daughter coach partnership helped us to be where we are now. So for me, I'm glad I met Tandy when I did. I'm glad I invested in the service when I did so that it allowed me to go through all of these phases. So one thing that I will say that at the beginning of this year I had to recognize, I thought that since I had spent a lot of time with Tikaya, with a lot of conversations, that I thought this year was going to be like a stair step year, straight line, just no. I just imagined we were just going to go full force ahead. And for real, for me, it's been squishy. It's been moments of, Kaya, are you gonna meet your deadlines? Kaya, are you gonna submit your scholarships this week? Kaya, what's your plan this week? And just having that other voice in her life where she could call Tandy and maybe not get as much pressure. Tandy's approach is gentle when it needs to be and firm when it needs to be. And it was a counter to my voice. And I see Kaya shaking her head. Yeah, it was a counter to my voice and my approach.
Yeah. So as a parent, that squishiness. I want to talk. I know. I'm gonna have to dig into the squishiness.
Yes.
What I tell parents, and until you're sitting in that seat and you know your kid is supposed to leave 12 months from then and be like an adult in a whole other city, possibly state, that pressure emotionally on you as a parent it shifts everything.
Yeah.
It literally shifts everything. So when she says it's squishy, part of it is some of the things we were talking to Kaya about in terms of Kaya growing personally. We talked to her about that sophomore year. We talked to her about junior year. We were still working on things and personally developing her. But senior year, how did it feel? Like, you know that some of those things we were working on building her up in those areas, but senior year, did it feel different for you?
It felt definitive. So I allowed Kaya to change her mind. I allowed Kaya to express. But at some point, I'm like, okay, my dear, this is senior year. And no, you're not going to get another year of high school. This is it. We have to put you in a definitive plan now. Um, and so I needed her to be confident in her choice, and I needed
Mm-hmm.
her to, and I call it, own her journey. She needed to. I wake her up every day and say, okay, what's on your agenda today? How can I support you with your agenda today? Because this is not my journey. And that's
Yeah.
the thing that I had to recognize early on. I am somebody who would have needed to have made a firm decision for myself in fall, and then just support that decision all the way through. For Kaya, her decision wasn't firm in fall, and that was a source of frustration that I had to eventually say, this is not about me. It is not
Mm.
my life journey. It is hers. And I have to know that she has the full support of Tandy. She has the full support of her community. She has the full support of her family. She has the full support of God. She has a full support team all around her. And she has to move into her journey, her steps with the confidence, knowing that this is the right place for me at this time, because obstacles will happen, and I need her to be able to deal with whatever obstacles are in her path. So we would write down all of her choices and all of the pathways, and then talk
Yeah.
about the pros, the cons, the life design choices, and the obstacles that could come that in that path, and would she be willing to deal with that particular obstacle for that particular path.
Yeah. And so that as a parent, I don't want you guys to miss that. You're watching this either as a replay or you're watching it live. I don't want you to miss that because other parents don't talk to each other. I see these things as I'm working with families, right? But other parents don't necessarily talk to each other about these moments. She wanted Kaya to know what that decision was when we were meeting in September and October, and Kaya couldn't give her an answer.
Yeah.
And it started frustrating her as a parent. And my response to that was, if she doesn't know what happens, what happens? Like, does her hair catch on fire? Does your hair catch on fire? And sometimes me saying things like that, people are a little bit annoyed, but they have to think about it. Like, how does this impact her end journey if she doesn't have this completely figured out in September or October in terms of exactly I'm going to be, I'm going to be a designer and I'm going to be at this school and I want to do this major and I have this amount of money. Does that preclude that at the end of the year, she's headed to a space that's best for Kaya, that is completely debt free, and she's getting what she needs? And I think sometimes we want it to look a certain way. Even me, there's times where I'm pushing them and I have to back off because I see we've hit an emotional wall. And when you hit an emotional wall with a team, the further you push, the more damage you have to undo to get them back on your side. Let me say that again. That's a nugget. She's shaking her head because she saw it. She saw that coming up a couple times, and I said we have to back off. And I saw her face kind of like, we ain't got time to back off. Like, we ain't got time to push forward because it's gonna be hard if we push her past her point to get her back on this side. And so just know that we have to take care of emotions as we're doing this journey, as we're taking care of the technicalities, and we want these things figured out. And there is a point where, for me as a professional in the situation, a coach, the mentor, consultant, where I say, okay, if you don't have this figured out, here's the consequence, Kaya. Here's what's going to happen. And here's the best safety net we can create in this situation. Okay. And that's what part of what you get when you get me is that I'm able to have those moments and be honest with you. And sometimes sometimes they're ready to move and sometimes they aren't. But I haven't had a kid that hasn't had like some like closure by the end of senior year that we're moving and we know where we're moving to next. Now we may have like two options still open depending on when I got them. Like I got Kaya early, so we still had time to figure this stuff out, right? But if I get a senior right now, the career exploration they may need to do may not fully happen because we're going to get deep into test prep and college application and scholarships, guys. So that's something for you to know and recognize what's really needed by the end of this journey and what's not. Because sometimes we want stuff that's not needed. All right. Any more questions? Any more questions in the comments? I would love to hear from those of you all that are watching. What has been your biggest takeaway? Is there any other support information that we can provide you before we get off the stream tonight? All right. So while I'm waiting to see if we get any more questions, I appreciate your help and your patience with our tech issues. It's been fun with tech. But I want to talk a little bit about Project 104 Rise. Project 104 Rise is a program that Kaya was in. In this program is 360 support. So you heard Kaya talk about her support. You heard her mom talk about the support she got as the parent. We do our financial aid applications together. We do our college applications together. We go through the scholarship applications. We position and help students understand what's going to be best for them when they're filling out an application. Kaya filled out an application at one point, and the committee was so impressed. They were like, we just need this one thing done. They made a call back to Kaya and said, there's this one piece we want to make sure you do this way before we submit it to our national team. Okay. Kaya on this journey has had a moment. The program that she's going into for college now for this first year, they're behind the scenes. People wanted to know, like, can I please be her mentor or her coach in this program? Because of how she presented herself. But that's something she learned how to do along the way, guys. It's something she learned how to do along the way. And we position children, well, let me not say children, teens. I normally call them teens and scholars along this journey so that they can get to the end, get to the goal, and get their debt free. So I have a link here, bit.ly Scholar Dollar Survey, bit.ly/Scholar Dollar Survey. If you're interested in going through this program and having your child go through this journey and having extra support at this level, you want to fill out this survey, and then I will follow up with you about availability to get your appointment set. Project 104 Rise is more of an invitation application type program now because I want to preserve the integrity of the group, right? When Kaya just did the COVID-19 think tank, and there were 8 kids in there that were working through to find solutions to help us with this coronavirus spread. And when you create spaces like that, it needs to be safe for them. And Kaya will tell you probably the only thing I've ever probably got out of pocket with them on is if I feel like a kid is not being handled, yeah, there's a different Miss Sandy that comes out. If I feel like their teachers are mistreating them and we need to advocate, because we had that moment where we feel like Kaya was not being handled properly, and we advocate and handle that. So I just want to let you know that we're doing it this way to make sure that you're getting the best support that I have to offer, if that's me, or if it's a referral out to another program, or if it's a different program. Maybe it's not Project 104 Rise, because I have other programs. But this is the program that I'm showcasing, because this is where we really work hard to build a portfolio that these kids can talk about even when they're in their 30s and 40s. Like Kaya's written a book. She's an author for life now. Nobody can take that away from her in this process. So again, Project 104 Rise, bit.ly/Scholar Dollar Survey. And we are going to wrap up. Any last words that you all want to share with the audience? Any last words you want to share with the audience?
You want to go first?
Okay. I just want to say thank you to Miss Tandy for all that she's done, because she's really pushed me to be the best of me I could be. Um, Without her in my life, I don't think I would be able to have the motivation and have the drive to believe in myself and um, push me to my limits. Maybe like I didn't really want to be pushed, but I needed to be pushed. And she gave me that, extra push. So.
Thank you, Kaya.
All right, and my last thing is I'm highly grateful. I'm grateful for the time that I've been able to spend with Miss Tandy, with Kaya, and that's because her approach was always totally different from mine, and I had to step back and learn how to ask questions so my daughter can hear her own voice and also be able to understand if I go down this path, here are my consequences, and I'm prepared to fully own those consequences. It's helped us to navigate through obstacles. I want to say that again. We had a lot of obstacles, and it's not. It was obstacles in the process, and then obstacles in the mindset to keep moving forward. And so I really appreciate that she kind of stood in the middle to advocate for Kaya and gave Kaya opportunities to explore different pathways. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And I definitely, you said obstacles, and I want to point out we have mental obstacles. We have obstacles that we create, like our own environment creates. And then we have things that are totally out of our control that are happening at the high schools and the colleges with staff and all those things. And so we have to navigate all three kinds in this process. And so so even when everything's okay, quote unquote, in our world, our personal world, we still have these different obstacles to navigate. And I am so happy and so proud to have served you and continuing on. And I'm super excited and proud of you, Kaya. When I got the message I got the other week, I just yelled out loud. Like that was, I mean, I love the test prep thing, but honestly, when I got the message that you were accepted into the program, and it was more like, I want to be the person that gets to mentor Kaya. That was such a beautiful moment. That was such a beautiful moment to watch where you blossom from 10th grade year till now. So happy graduation. You know, we're celebrating. I have a lot of us. And I appreciate you guys. So we're going to sign off for tonight, and we'll see you at the next interview, guys.
Bye.